Hi, I'm Kojo, also known as Karma Houdini, and I also play lead guitar in the band Master Sword. You can check out links to my music in the description below. So here today, I'm going to talk about Load and Reload, the two albums by Metallica from 1996 and 1997, respectively. For a lot of people, those albums are like the weakest point of Metallica, or maybe only second to Saint Anger, but recently, this year I've been listening to them a lot, actually, for the first time in my life. I always knew some of the songs, of course, growing up in the 90s, but I've actually listened to Reload all the way through for the first time this year. And, I used to think Load was the better album overall, but I'm starting to feel like I'm not sure anymore. It could be Reload. So why don't we get more in depth on a little sort of reaction, review, retrospective, whatever you want to call it. Let's start off with some standout tracks from each album. For Load, I think some of the standout tracks are Outlaw Torn, Ain't My Bitch, Wasting My Hate, 2x4, Bleeding Me, King Nothing. Those are all great songs. Load has a lot of good music. The mix for both of these albums is kind of similar because they were written and recorded sort of in the same sessions around the same time. So they went for a more live rock band feeling on these albums, as opposed to maybe like the Black Album, where like they were going for a much huger, a much bigger sound overall with the Black Album. And then with Load and Reload, they kind of made it feel a little bit more intimate and stripped down, while still feeling pretty massive and thick. And something I really like about the mix of both of these albums is the presence of the bass guitar. You can really hear Jason Newsted's bass lines very clearly throughout like all of these songs. And I really like that about the Black Album, Load and Reload, is that you can hear the bass very clearly. I think some of the weaker songs on Load are like Poor Twisted Me, Ronnie, Thorn Within. And then there's a sort of a weird caveat with Mama Said. Mama Said is kind of a country-esque song. Or not even kind of, it's a super country-esque song. And it's not bad. I personally am not a huge fan of country. I almost never listen to country. I just don't really like it much, but I think that in small doses it can be fine. And with Mama Said, it's actually a pretty good song. It just doesn't really feel like a Metallica song. It feels more like it should be a James Hetfield solo album kind of thing. It's kind of surprising. I don't think he's ever done a solo album, actually. But yeah, that feels more like it should be a solo album thing rather than a Metallica song. And I think when they've played it live, it's almost always just been like Hetfield on an acoustic guitar playing and singing. That's how it feels to me. But yeah, there are definitely some weak tracks on Load. So it's not like a perfect album by any means, but my favorite song overall from Load is The Outlaw Torn, which is the last song on the album. It's fantastic, and the S&M versions, the versions that Metallica played with a symphony, are also fantastic. Let's move on to Reload. With Reload, so basically Reload was supposed to be, all these songs were supposed to come out together as a double album, Load and Reload. It's about 30-ish songs. They're all supposed to be a double album, but they didn't really have the time to record all 30 songs at once, so they released them separately 1 year after the other, 96 and 97, as I said earlier. On Reload, I used to think it was the weaker album of the two, and I feel like that's the common sentiment, but now that I've actually been listening to Reload all the way through, I'm not sure. It might be a little bit better, more consistent throughout, but it's hard to say. Standout tracks for Reload, in my opinion, include Prince Charming, Fuel, Fixer, Memory Remains, Where the Wild Things Are. Whereas there are, of course, still some weaker tracks on Reload as well, like I think Attitude and Bad Seed. Like they're not awful. I don't think there are any awful songs on either album, but there are some weaker ones, and I think Attitude and Bad Seed are not great, but they're not bad. They're really cheesy, and that's something I think that turns a lot of people off from these albums, is that every once in a while, or on certain songs, there's some idiosyncrasies, let's say, of James Hetfield that feel very, very cheesy. Like it's like is like he's very obviously into country music, and it comes through in his singing, and sometimes it feels a little out of place in Metallica music. Other times it doesn't feel too bad, but it could be a little strange or hokey or silly. But it's heavy metal. It's really not all that serious. It's just people making loud noise and having fun. I think that the Unforgiven 2, which is on Reload, is okay, but it's not nowhere near as good as the first Unforgiven. In my opinion, out of the 3 Unforgiven tracks by Metallica, the first Unforgiven is the best one, hands down. The third one is pretty good, and then the second one's just sort of okay. So the second one is here on Reload. It's just okay. It's not bad by any means, but it's kind of a standard ballad, rock ballad. Part of me wonders if maybe they should have actually released Load and Reload together as a double album like they had originally planned. It just cut out a few of the songs that are weaker. I think maybe that might have been better than releasing them one year after the other, but who knows? It's not like we can go back in time and have them do it a different way and see what happens, but that's just my opinion. My favorite song off of Reload is once again the final song on the album, which is Fixer. It has this great groovy, like almost Black Sabbath-like riff that is, it's super awesome. It's a big long song. It jams. The lyrics are great. It's melodic. It's heavy. It goes places. I think going back to the lyrics for a second, I think Load and Reload have a lot of personal lyrics from James Hetfield. I think that the lyrics really go on a deeper level here. They're not just about like random things. Oh, obviously there are still some songs that are kind of about other things or random things, but there are a lot of songs that have personal lyrics to Hetfield. And I always enjoy personal lyrics from a vocalist. The songs can really connect with people on an emotional level, and I appreciate that. A lot of people feel like these albums don't really feel like Metallica, and like I said, there are some songs where I would agree, like Mama Said or whatever, but it's not always bad. Like Low Man's Lyric is a really strange ballad that at first I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, but after hearing it a couple times, Low Man's Lyric is actually pretty cool, and that is a very strange song for Metallica, and I appreciate that they were willing to experiment. And I think that's, what they were saying at the time, is like they wanted to try different things. They had been touring on the Black Album for like 4 years, and they wanted to do different kinds of music. And also, it's the mid-late 90s. Traditional heavy metal and like extreme metal was not very big during that time. It had really receded in popularity during that time. We said things like grunge, like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Those were the kinds of bands Pearl Jam, those were the kinds of bands that were becoming more popular during that time frame. You can definitely feel that being around musicians like that and, hearing music like that definitely influenced Metallica somewhat. I mean, heck, the first riff in Bad Seed sounds straight up like an Alice in Chains riff. But yeah, I don't really think it's a bad thing. The albums definitely feel very 90s. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends. Your mileage may vary. It depends on who you are. I also think that, going back to Hetfield, I think that even though he has some weird idiosyncrasies and a lot of countryisms, this is probably Hetfield at his best vocally in terms of the Metallica, album cycles. On Load and Reload, I really think he sounds great. He started getting really good around the Black Album time, but then by the time he gets to Load and Reload, I really feel like he's matured and he can really sing, And I think even though the songs might not be everybody's cup of tea, you can't really argue that his vocals haven't improved over time from Kill 'Em all the way up to Load and Reload. Something that I feel harms both Load and Reload is a lot of the songs are at medium tempos or slower tempos. So if you're trying to listen to one of these albums all the way through, in one shot, it can get a little monotonous or feel like a little bit like it's dragging its feet. So I definitely wouldn't recommend sitting down and just listening to one of these albums all the way through Especially, I feel like it's more of an issue with Load than it is with Reload. I feel like Load slows down too many times over the course of listening to the album. Another issue with songs feeling similar is a lot of the songs are in the same key, or like you are using similar riff patterns, like similar scales. Like a lot of them are based around like the blues scale, which is true of Metallica music in general. This is not just exclusive to Load and Reload. I just feel like they really went for similar types of riffs in certain songs. Some songs have riffs that are too similar to each other. Again, going back to my point of maybe they should have cut some songs out, so that it doesn't get too monotonous and too long. But overall, I think that these albums are a lot better than people give them credit for. They are not my favorite Metallica albums, but there are some of my favorite Metallica songs on these albums, like Bleeding Me, Outlaw Torn, Fixer, and so on. But it's really hard to recommend these albums to like hardcore metal fans, but people who are just more into like general hard rock and stuff probably get into this more easily. Even if you're a Metallica fan, you might not like this, but there are Metallica fans who love Load and Reload, and some people like them as their favorite. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of Load and Reload. Which of the two albums you like? What are some of your favorite songs from these albums? What are some of your favorite Metallica albums? What's some other songs or bands or albums you like that you would like me to talk about or review? I'll listen to stuff that you guys want to hear or want me to hear, and then I'll come back with my opinions and thoughts. Anyway, this has been Kojo, also known as Karma Houdini, also the lead guitarist of the heavy metal band Master Sword. You can check us out in the description. My solo music is here on this same channel. See you later.